And now we're gonna do something scary. We're gonna do the mandibles, which are fragile. They're small and they need to be glued to this head. It's kind of a scary little thing because you don't want to mess it up, because they're really they go on like that. They leave a little bit of a seam line, which we're gonna fix with a little bit of kids clay. So what we're gonna do, put some glue there. Might be a little bit too much. Get something off. And you want to make sure that you're perfectly lined up. Like that. I do hope that the peg hits the bottom. Now, for example, and I'll show you a small trick. We can put some glue there, and we're gonna wipe it off, and real fast gonna take our baby powder and put it on like that, or use your cocaine, that's also good. And now that baby powder is gonna fill that seam, and because we did some super glue on it in there, it's gonna fuse with the super glue and fill up some of that seam line. That's like, if you don't have any glue with you, but you do have like baby powder, see, it's already like fused with the it's already fused, so it gets like a darker color. It changes into a transparent type of thing. But that's one way, like, to get rid of a seam line. Now, I still need to go over it with a little bit of clay and make that like really smooth. But the baby powder trick is really good. It's a really good, nice trick to get fast results. You know, I wouldn't do your entire model with it. Oh, we're gonna line this up. Make sure it's now the fit for this. The fit is not 100%. It's it does need some touching up with seam lines. But I guess Narin, the guy who sculpted this, had no other choice, and it's not sticking. We'll have to wait a little bit until it sets. We're gonna let it dry because I don't want to mess it up. But we're gonna let it dry and we're gonna come back to it later. I'll show you how the head sculpt looks with the mandibles attached to it. We can continue on with the masked head because we still need to attach the dreadlocks, and I think for what I am going to do, I think gluing these parts on couldn't really hurt us in the painting process, because I still have like lots and lots of room to get in there with a wash, or that's not really an issue. Let's see, we have 2 more parts that need to be attached. So it goes on like that. I wonder if there's like an ideal way to attach these. It's kind of fiddly right now, but so I've been asking around for like how other people would have done it. Like, would you glue it, or would you glue it after painting? I'm not seeing a whole lot of reason why I shouldn't be gluing it right away, because I can reach all the areas that need painting. But I am kind of looking at let's try the other part. Is that I am looking at some fitting issues, or is that just my imagination? The thing is, I could drill a really small hole and then use a peg to kind of pin it in, and really solidify the connection. But it's gonna cause an issue on this part, because this part really is like a thin piece of resin. Doesn't have a lot of resin to drill into. And this goes here. This fits perfectly. Now, it might not surprise me if these two are slightly different at the connection point, because Narin does that a lot in his sculpts, where he just makes sure, for example, with the weapon, these sides were completely differently pegged. So this side could not fit into this, and this side and the other way around. And they were also like in reverse. If I wanted to turn this around, it wouldn't fit either. So it wouldn't surprise me if he did the same thing for the heads, where this part is for this head or the other way around. But it doesn't seem like that, but just want to make sure. Just double checking. Never hurts to double check something, because this seems to fit a lot better. That's not true. That's not, well, no, they fit exactly the same way. Just wouldn't surprise me if there was a slight difference. So I think I'm just gonna glue it to make sure that I'm gonna get a good connection. I'm just gonna dirty it up with a little bit of baby powder. I could sand it. That is also a good option, but I don't want to do that right now. But this is also like get some baby powder. So just dirty it up a little bit. Be conservative. Don't overdo it. And just, if you have an accelerator, use accelerator, obviously. But then again, I don't know if this qualifies as like a super glue. I think it's more like a cement because it melts plastic and it gets really hot when it reacts to something. So I don't know if that like qualifies as like a super glue. So that is already sticking. That's good. That's for the other head. Now we want to do the other side. And I think we'll do this one last. I think that's a better way to fit them. Yeah, that's the better way to fit them. So again, get some baby powder. There's some drilling dust in between there, so that's perfect to kind of dirty it up. Again, you could sand it. Perfectly viable option. Scratch it up a little bit so that the glue has something to hold on to. But I really just like the bond that the super glue creates in combination with the baby powder. It's just, it creates this really strong connection. So this is kind of like that. Yep. Now, because there is a slight seam line there, it seems like it's not fully connecting. So this part is not fully connecting with the back of his head. Now again, to kind of fix that, we're gonna get our baby powder. That's a little bit too much, but it came out a little bit too fast, but that's okay. Just tap it in there a little bit. Just keep tapping it so that like all of that stuff that, you know, is tapped into that crevice or that seam line. Yeah, brush would work too. Yeah, I'll show you. Let me get the correct brush to do it with. Because you don't want to use any type of brush. I want to use an old brush. Yeah, there we go. Use this brush, a flat brush. The type of brush that you would use. Nah, it's too expensive, man. Use like a really cheap flat brush and work it in there. And I've filled seam lines with that before. Like, there we go. Just work it in. And then use a little bit of super glue. Wipe off excess. Again, it gets hot because of the reaction it gets with the baby powder, and there we go. Now it's closed. Get something in the corner there. Just small, neat little tricks to make sure that connections between two parts are just gonna get glued solid. And this is just a very quick, simple way, cheap way to do it. So now there's no more seam line there. It's closed. Because we spilled a little bit of that extra dust, we already have like a dirtied up surface for that last part. Let's clean off some of that. Let's clean off some of that. All right, so the final part. I'm kind of worried that the fitting is not 100%. There's a lot of a really big seam line there. I wonder why it's not connecting. It's not the other parts. So we have a little bit of an issue here. And I think I know why. It's because this piece is hitting something it's not supposed to. So we're gonna sand that down. Need to know how much I need to shave off. So this all fits good. That fits better now. But I still think that it's not going to connect very well. So it seems to fit better now. That's connecting well enough. I think I need slightly more, shave off slightly more from that. This head is giving me issues. This head is giving me a headache. Okay. It's fitting a lot better, but still not 100%. So we're just gonna try. I want to try this tool. And that seam line is also, it's still pretty big, but so this side is excellent. This still is, it's still hitting. Just want to shave off small bits at a time. Small bits at a time. Taking your time is important. Okay, that side fits perfect. Still a large seam line. If you fit it like this, it's almost 100% perfect. Yautja. Yeah. Just a tiny little bit more. Just a tiny little bit more. Like, alright, so I'll explain to you guys. If this were like a more plasticky kind of material, you could easily clip off like a small bit of that. But because it's resin, if you clip it, it will break. And it will always break in a place where you don't want it to break. So that's why you have to sand it. But for example, if you have plastic models, you could easily like use a pair of clippers, or even a nail clipper would work. But that doesn't work on like this type of resin. And resin is just famous for breaking off when you clip it, so that's why you always have to sand it. I'm looking. Make sure that this corner is completely clean, that it's flat, so that when it connects, it's not gonna connect to like dust or... Yeah, this model is just putting all my skills to the test. Like my problem solving skills, basically. It's like, okay, I've made these mistakes like 100 times before, but on this model it's all coming like, it comes all together in one model. Just really have to like use all those tricks that I've learned along the way. I have to use them on this model. Alright, so I can get a good connection there. Okay. Just want to sand this just in case, because the baby powder didn't really work for this for such a big piece. Touch the power lines. So you want to make sure that this connects, that connects. Okay. Rough it up a little. Nope. I want this one. Now imagine having fitting issues after you've painted. So that's why I kind of decided to immediately like glue it. I have enough room to paint in the neck, even with the dreads on. So, but I wouldn't want to fiddle around with a head sculpt like this when it's painted, and I have to go through all of those steps with a painted head. That's just not cool. So, all right. Yes, this fits. Now, quickly apply this. I want it right there, right there, right there, and I want it right there. Now I know it's not going to be 100% connecting. But that's okay. We're going to fix that with our baby powder trick. I really want it. I hope it's going to stick right. Okay. Now we're gonna take our baby powder while... Oop, careful. While that is still like wet. And we want to get it in there. I'm gonna take that brush that we used. We're gonna destroy the brush because we're gonna get super glue on there, but that's okay. We're just gonna stamp it in. And now at least we know that the connection between those parts on top of there are gonna be 100%. Oh, we got a little bit of... Let me adjust the camera. We got super glue on this brush. So now the brush is ruined. That's why I picked another one. So just know that when you've done this, throw away that brush. But at least that connection is 100% solid. And the seam line is filled up immediately. Oh, there we go. So here you can see that. If you do this carefully enough, if you're just gentle, take your time, you're not gonna just destroy other pieces of the sculpt. And the powder is just gonna stick to where you put your super glue. And if you're gentle enough, careful enough, you won't have to worry about destroying other parts or get glue in places where it shouldn't be. Now, normally I would definitely use like clay or multi-putty, but that's when the two parts that I need to fill up the seam are already connected with a solid connection. Now these parts didn't have like a super solid connection. You can see that the super glue is in between that seam. And just take a brush, it's already super destroyed, to dab it on to make sure that it's not pooling. If that makes sense. But now that right now you have like a super solid connection. That's why I use a flat brush, because you can stamp it down really well. There we go. Clean it up for you guys so that you can see it. Now, if there's like an area where you're thinking like, oh, might be a little bit too much, I'll show you guys. You take your sanding tool and you can slowly just sand that area. You can perfectly sand it down. So you can see that there's a few little areas that still need to be filled up, but I can do that with clay or with multi-putty later. Don't have to be fiddling around with the super glue because... But now at least I know that the connections between the parts is solid and I don't have to worry about that seam line causing issues later. So it's solid, and I can fill that seam line the old-fashioned way with clay or multi-putty. Now that's basically how I kind of fix gluing parts that do not have like a solid connection between the two parts. That's kind of how I fix that issue. If you can't pin it, if you can pin it, pin it. But for this head, just wasn't very ideal to start pinning it because the resin pieces were so thin that it's real easy to drill right through it, and this is something I don't want to do. So here you can see that the two pieces didn't 100% connect. That's alright. We're just gonna go in with a little bit of super glue. Be careful. Don't spill it. Get that baby powder on it. Just stab it like that. Get your old destroy brush. Work it in. There's a lot of excess, but that's okay. That's not a problem. And you just work it in like that. And now it's hard to see what's what, but that's dried, and now that is filled up. You can see it's kind of white transparency there. That's been filled up, and now now the two pieces are connected. If you like start priming it, you won't see it. That's kind of how I make sure that my pieces are connected 100%. So if I would prime this, I'll make sure that all these holes, all these seam lines are filled up. You'd think that it's just one piece, but in reality it's 4 pieces. So right here there's still put a little bit too much in. Suck that up a little bit. Take some of that baby powder. Sprinkle it on. It's a really neat trick, and I think it's not being displayed too often. Not a lot of people, maybe they're embarrassed to use this type of technique. I don't know. I've seen a couple of modelers on YouTube use it. It's just a very solid way to get a good solid connection. Here it is. It's kind of white transparency. As you can see, all these parts are now connected except for that, and I'm gonna fix that as well. We're gonna go for the 100%. There we go. It's a little bit much because it's a very tiny seam line, so take off a little bit. Take our baby powder. There we go. Seam line filled. Now I'm brushing it like that because I want to get all that dust that's not glued. I want to get that off. Get a clean, because that baby powder is going to get everywhere. I mean, you do not want to, like, if you look at my pants right now, now for example, right here, I could sand it a little bit. Not that you're gonna see it, but just to display, just to show you guys that it's easily sandable. Sand it smooth. Yeah, I'm satisfied with that. Still see like a tiny seam. Work it into the seam line. So there's a few little spots. that I'm not gonna touch. I'm gonna do those with clay. Yeah, with clay. Yeah, because with clay I can be a lot more precise. But I think at least the hair is solid connected now. And it fits perfect on the body. So that's something that we don't have to touch. And I still have enough room to kind of paint the neck. Yeah, let's see how he looks with the dreads on. I mean, oh man. That is amazing. That is amazing. Now I like the dreadlock approach. That it's flowing. And that it's over his shoulders.